Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mrs. Ross Does Math. This lesson is for Math 8, and the lesson is number 14. Our focus today is going to be on perfect squares. Now, this is the start of a new unit for us, so I wanted to review the different lessons that we're going to be doing beforehand. Throughout this unit, our topic is going to be lines and angles, and our focus overall is something called the Pythagorean theorem. This is a theorem we will be using almost daily throughout this unit, starting with lesson 16. Lesson 14 is perfect squares, 15 estimating square roots, 16 Pythagorean theorem, 17, the converse of Pythagorean theorem, 18, applying the Pythagorean theorem, 19, distance on the coordinate plane, and lastly, 20, the distance formula. Now, this is also the last unit of this textbook. Now, moving into our topic for today, once again, this is lesson 14, and our focus is perfect squares. Our essential question for today is, how do you recognize and find the value of perfect squares? So that is where we will be starting today. Now, before we begin, we do have one key vocabulary word, and that is square root. Square root is one of the two equal factors of a number. What that means is that if I have the number 25, the same number multiplied by itself would be my square root. In that case, 5 is the square root of 25 because 5 times 5 gives me 25. So here, the square root of 25 is 5. Next, throughout this unit, you will see different square root problems, and those square root problems could be written as the square root of 25, the square root of 49, and the square root of 100. That is what this sign means right here. It's asking you to find the square root of. So here, the square root of 25, we know that, I just covered it. The square root of 25 is 5 because 5 times 5 gives us 25. So the same number together comes together as 1 down below. So my answer is 5. Now the same two numbers that multiply together to give me 49 are 7 times 7. So the square root of 49 is 7. And once again, the square root of 100, the same number multiplied by itself to give me 100 is 10. 10 times 10 gives me 100. So therefore, my square root is 10. Now, as we go through this, you will be asked to not only find the square root, but to also find the value of. So if we have a problem like 5 squared, that's asking you to go 5 times 5. Because again, this exponent here tells us how many 5s we will have. So when it says find the value of 5 squared, we're going to go 5 times 5, so therefore our answer would be 25. Now, in your assignment and in this lesson, you will also be solving square roots involving equations. These are not anything different than 1, 2, or multi-step equations. The same processes will be used here. So I have two example problems that we are going to go over together. Now, problem number 1 says x squared equals 9. This x squared needs to go away, specifically the squared. How I get rid of a squared is by using the square root. So I am going to put a square root sign over the top here, And what we do to one side, we're also going to do to the other. So I'm going to put a square root over the 9. Now by putting the square root up here, that leaves me with just a single x. And then the square root of 9 is 3. So my answer would be x equals 3. Now I can check this by plugging that 3 in for my x. So I'm going to go 3 squared equals 9. 3 squared is 3 times 3. 3 times 3 does give me 9. So 9 equals 9. My answer is correct. In our other problem, we are going to use the same steps we would in two-step equations. We're first going to begin in the 3x squared minus 1 by equals 11 by getting rid of that negative 1. And once again, we know it's a negative because if we cover up the parts in front of it, we're left with minus 1. So from here, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. That will leave me with 3x squared equals 12. Now, if this was just simply 3x, we would divide by 3 on both sides. That is what we're going to do. So I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. I cannot use a square root unless my number, or sorry, not my number, the variable is just simply by itself. So it has to say x squared in order for me to use a square root. Now, the 3's cancel out here, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So now I get x squared equals 4. This is where we can now put the square root over our x squared and the square root over our 4. Now the square root of 4, that is 2. So my answer is going to say x equals 2. Now once again, I can check this by plugging that 2 into our equation. So for this, I'm going to get 3 times 2 squared minus 1 equals 11. Now, according to our order of operations, we always have to do our exponents first. Now here, the squared is attached to the 2, so I'm going to do that first. So 2 squared is going to give me 4, so I'm going to go 3 times 4 minus 1 equals 11. Now, according to our order of operations, we have to do the multiplication. So I'm going to go 12 minus 1 equals 11, and ultimately 12 minus 1 is 11, so I'm going to get 11 equals 11. Once again, our answers match, so we get a happy face. Now, if at any point you are still confused by this, please go back, rewatch this video, review the information out of the textbook that I sent home. Please take a look at this if you have anything, you need anything. Also, send me a message, send me a comment, leave me a comment, and I will do everything I can to help you guys out. Now, before I leave you today, I wanted to do one large problem. Before I go over this, I would like you guys to please pause this video, and I want you to try and attempt this one on your own. So please pause it and give it a shot. All right, well, thank you so very much for trying this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and review this problem. So if you got it right, you can confirm your answer. If you did not, you're going to be able to see where the mistake occurred, so we can go ahead and correct that for the future. Here we go. So this says x squared plus 46 equals 190. I'm going to first begin by minusing the 46 from both sides, giving me x squared is equals to 144. Now, because I have no number attached to my x squared, I can simply go through and use the square root to get rid of the x squared. Now the square root of x squared is simply x, and the square root of 144, that is 12. So my answer is x is equals to 12. Now on this assignment and throughout this entire unit, you guys are allowed to use calculators. If you need access to a calculator, please let me know and I will do what I can to send one home if you cannot get one on your own. Now once again, I'm going to go ahead and check my answer. It's a really good idea for us to go back and do that. So plugging this in, I'm going to go 12 squared because x was 12, so I'm going to put 12 in place of the x. So I'm going to get 12 squared plus 46, and that's going to equal 190. Once again, according to our order of operations, we have to do our exponents first. 12 squared is 144. 144 plus 46 is going to give us 190. So 190 equals 190. Our answers match, and we are happy. Now, before I leave you today, I do want to go over a couple of problems on your assignment. Now, your assignment looks like this. It is Math 8, Lesson 14, Perfect Squares. In this assignment, your directions state to find the value for numbers 1 through 12. Okay. Please make sure you put your name on this, the date, and the class period as well. Here, in number 1, when it asks us to find the value, it says 2 squared. Remember, this squared tells me that I have 2 sets of 2. So this is going to equal 2 times 2, which will ultimately give me an answer of 4. So my answer for number 1 is 4. Next, I'm going to take a look at number 5. Number 5 says, what is the square root of 1? Well, there are only 2 numbers that multiply together to give us 1, and that is 1 and 1. Because these numbers are the same, my square root of 1 is 1. Next, we're going to go ahead and give number 11 a shot. So I'm going to scooch this up, and here we go. Number 11 says a square has an area of 81 square meters. Our task is to find the length of one side of the square and to find the perimeter of the square. Now, in order to do this, we are going to need a couple of equations. The first one is that area is equals to length times width. The second one is perimeter. Perimeter is 2 lengths, or 2 times L, plus 2W, or 2 times W. That is how we'll find our perimeter. You could also use the equation P is equals to 2 parentheses L plus W. Either equation will work when finding the perimeter. So once again, it says a square has 81 square meters. So I'm going to draw a square. And remember, a square has 4 equal sides. We'll just imagine that that's a square. And its total area is 81 meters squared. M is for meters, and I'm putting the square instead of having to write square meters. Now, we know that our area is 81. So I'm going to put 81 in place of A. What I don't know is my length and my width. Here, because I have a square, each side is exactly the same. So here, my length and my width are both going to be x. X times x gives me x squared. Here, I will now go ahead and get rid of the squared by using the square root. Now the square root of 81 is 9, so I'm going to get 9 equals x. Because this is a word problem, we need words in our answer. So we're going to say the length of one side is 9 meters. Now it's not going to be 9 meters squared. Only the area is squared. The length will specifically be 9 meters. Next, we have the perimeter. If we know in our figure that each side is 9, and again, each side is 9 because it's a square, and a square has 4 congruent sides. So I have 9 there. I'm going to call this my length, and 9 here, that's my width. According to my equation, and I'm going to use this top one here, I'm going to go, my perimeter is equals to 2 times my length, which is 9, plus 2 times my width, which is 9 as well. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 plus 18 gives us 36. So the perimeter is equals to 36. Now once again, this is a word problem, so I'm going to state words in my answer. So we are going to write the perimeter is 36 meters. Now once again, the perimeter is not squared. It is just a simple unit of measurement, so we're just going to write it as meters. Now the last problem I'd like to go over with you today on this assignment is number 14. In this section, it says solve each question, check your answers. Now, for this, before I can do any square rooting here, in number 14 where it says 6a squared equals 24, I'm going to have to get rid of the 6. So I'm going to begin by dividing each side of my problem by 6. That will leave me with a squared is equals to 4. Because 24 divided by 6, that gives us 4. Now, I'm going to be able to use their square root in order to get rid of the squared here. Now, the square root of a squared is a, and the square root of 4, that is 2. So my answer is a is equals to 2. Now, once again, I can check this by plugging that in. So this is 6a squared. Now, that's 6 times a squared. So in this case, 6 times 2 squared, and that needs to equal 24. Now 2 squared I have to do first because it's my exponent, so I'm going to get 6 times 4 equals 24, and you betcha 24 is equals to 24. Our answers match. Once again, if you guys have any questions at all, please leave me a comment, send me a message. I'm here to help any way I can. Rewatch this video if needed. Thank you so much for watching. This is Mrs. Ross Does Math.